I want to write a brief piece on that Watchmen series which aired in 2019 on HBO, the work of the infamous Damon Lindelof, a series which received a lot of very mainstream, as in the main media reviewers, adulation, but seemed despised and derided by much of the more common internet avenues of discussion. Many complaints centered around the series being far too concerned with the issues of American race relations compared with the ideas explored in the source text, or potentially just those taking issue with the series being explored again at all, as they were with the comic books before Watchmen. The issues of this show, insofar as there are issues, I actually don't consider to be due to the series exploring the concept of race relations in America, although potentially the series is weaker because I'm not convinced it does so extremely well, or in a manner that is more than above average. It is worth remembering that this is still a work devised by a white individual, and whilst at least two of the credited screenwriters on this program were of African American descent, it is easy to consider how any television writer might prefer to just cater to their boss's preferences rather than inform them how to handle the material. Perhaps Lindelof was far more democratic than I am presuming, and one suspects the cast have their input too. Paul Robeson and his wife Eslander considered the ideas of Kenneth MacPherson and H.D. Hilda Doolittle to be... Now, this is in regard to the classic 1930 film Borderline, where I'm very fond of it anyway, to be, to quote Islander, naive to the point of making, to quote her, so shriek with laughter that Paul and I often completely ruined our makeup with tears of laughter, had to make up all over again. One assumes this subsequently affected the finished film. That all being acknowledged, it is a little bit difficult to imagine this exact same end result where the showrunner, like where the series is concerned, where the showrunner and scriptwriters of African American heritage, though it also it's worth a mention that Lindelof is Jewish, and so his perspective on being a minority in America might be more meaningful than I appear to consider, although why I suspect a more dominant African American voice could have assisted the series' aspirations is that I'm not sure what the ultimate insight the program itself is attempting to share to its audience. It is not a condemnation of the costumed vigilante genre or figure, where its alliance with an existing police force is concerned, or seemingly, as the source comic inspired some discourse surrounding. It isn't pro-police, it implies the police departments of the United States were institutionally racist to the point of rendering them potentially Klan-adjacent, possibly even irredeemable, or this is contradicted by other insinuations within this series. One almost wishes it had nothing to do with Watchmen at all, and was a unique, compelling diatribe on masked vigilantes in the United States being an effectively clan-descended disposition. Remember, characters like Judex existed to depose the popularity of the first famous masked vigilante in fiction, the villainous Phantomex. Phantomex is the Grant Morrison sort of reimagining from New X-Men years later of French literature and then the cinema. And anyway, so in this series, which is then reworked as a means for certain oppressed groups in the country to fight back and to stand up for themselves. This is a really captivating idea, and it is weakened when it has to incorporate Dr. Manhattan, Adrian Veidt on a Jupiter satellite, that giant squid incident from the mid-80s, which is so out of place in this kind of narrative, and a mostly hackneyed Rorschach-inspired white supremacy movement, the anti-police nature of which is relatively fascinating and consistent with the Rorschach pathology, but the white nationalism seems a little less Rorschach, unless I'm misremembering the text maybe. We never read the whole diary, maybe he said some gross things about other racial groups. But also given implications that the police might also be deeply white supremacist, why do the cavalry detest them so much? Maybe this is reflecting the inconsistency within America's own racial supremacist sects, a desire to overthrow a government which many would accuse of being institutionally inescapably even racist or white supremacist anyway. But then what is this show trying to say about this beyond merely pointing it out, which any of us, even those outside of America such as myself, are entirely able to do? Apparently Bill Evans was told by Miles when the rest of the band were in discussion on Kind of Blues recording sessions that white opinions weren't sought. If this made Kind of Blue what it is, I'm not upset Evans' suggestions were apparently uniformly dismissed. Possibly this should have been the case on a Watchmen series of this sort, to the extent that maybe if the prospective more apt creators, had decided to remove it from being a Watchmen follow-up at all, and instead hone in on its refreshing originality, and composing a very congruent, effective, revelatory socio-cultural thesis beyond the general predictability espoused in this project. It could have been far, far better off, I feel. Plus, maybe a bit less patting themselves in the back if it were coming from a real place where writers, showrunners of distinct ethnic heritage are concerned. The trappings of Watchmen may have been a detriment to this narrative, and they ought to have considered the components that tessellated, but then reskin and remold the rest of it, possibly. Much like occurred with the original Watchmen itself. And clearly that was all the better for it. Once again, thanks so much, everyone, again.